Hope everybody's doing okay. Um, I'm gonna for a video pivot away from the Slaves of Satan series, which I would encourage everybody to watch if they want a very detailed breakdown and all the dots connected to what drove the world um into the moralist place that it is right now. But um this is a series that I want to start about explaining symbols, the exoteric and esoteric meaning. Exoteric meaning what is known for the public, and esoteric is what is meant to be hidden about the meaning of the symbols. And one of the reasons I decided I wanted to start doing these was because this is one of the subjects that I would say I specialize in the most. Um, is combined with studies about the true history that the school won't tell you. Research on all these different people. Just research into um obscure topics that most people won't touch. I probably have between 50 to 100,000 hours of research into that, and that's not counting all the research into the Bible and Scripture either. So, because I would say I probably have an equal amount in that. But anyways, I'll get started. First I'll start with one of the most basic ones, the yin and yang symbol. Which most people understand it to be duality. Duality. This is one of the ones that does not have really exoteric, an esoteric meaning completely. Um, it's not something that societies use or cults, so it's not really a hidden symbol, but it does go further than just the duality. And one thing to note, the culture that it originates from in Asia, they view it black as pure and white as unpure. So it's important to take that into consideration when looking at the yin and the yang. But what else it represents that some would consider esoteric just because less known. It represents the sun and moon. In Asian witchcraft, they'll use it. And also obviously represents sin and purity. That's pretty obvious. And sex magic, it represents the man and the woman. Represents the reproductive organs, and it's also very big in all Asian martial arts. Whether it's Tai Chi, Karate, Kung Fu, Qigong, Taekwondo. It's big in all of them because when the further you get into the martial arts, the further it draws you into evil spirits and Lucifer. Because I should probably need to do a whole video on this eventually, but martial arts is steeped into the occult. Just how I did a video on how yoga is demonic, so is the martial arts. And just like in yoga, those positions um jacks you in to communicating with whatever god the position is based off of, because all those positions are based off different false Hindu gods. And in Asia, all those martial arts moves originate from various Asian gods. Now, the triangle. The triangle is one of the more obvious ones. I'm trying to get the most simple ones out of the way first. Not really gonna spend much time on this one. Obviously, a triangle can represent pyramids, but it's also used as the in alchemy a lot. Like, for example, if it's upside down with the slash in it, it'll represent one of the elements. If it's down with the slashes in it, it'll represent one of the elements. And that's always there. The triangle. The triangle. Now the pentagram. Now, I want to make it clear there is no good version of a pentagrams, because you'll have Wicca argue that if it's not inverted, then it means good, but no, it doesn't. Now, the regular just star inside the circle. Um, that it is true that it's not it's not meant for the purpose of being evil. When it's like that, people that you see wearing the regular pentagrams, they do think that it just means basically nature usually, or they'll try to tell you that represents the human body, like the top represents the head, um uh, to the both angles on the left and right represent the arms, and then the bottoms represent the legs. But obviously it's not true, but they think that's not evil. Now, the inverted pentagram is much more powerful in terms of occult magic, and one of the things that makes it powerful is the intent and will of the magician that's using it. And also something that people don't know about the pentagram that I almost never hear get discussed, but this is in one of Manly P. Hall's books, and I certainly do not recommend reading his books, because they are very evil antichrist books, as he was a very Luciferian type of person. That's somebody that when I get to that part on the timeline, I will be doing a very long video about, because there's quite a lot to say. But in one of his books, I believe it's The Secret Teaching of All Ages, he says that he taught that leaving that the broken pentagram, by leaving one part open to the left, is to let the evil spirits come in. Like, for example, some people know about all the satanic architect in Washington D.C. In their street designs, they have a broken pentagram. Um, Now something that I want to mention, and this only has one meaning, and there really is no exoteric meaning, just the esoteric meaning, because it's not really something meant for the public. I know it's used in certain Masonic lodges and other occult satanic groups, but it's called the Magic Circle of Saturn. And like I said, um, though there is no exoteric meaning, you still have to have a knowledge of what it's trying to say to understand it. Okay, so right here you'll see the magic square of Saturn, and you'll see that no matter what way you go, it it all comes out. It'll say 1-5. But see, the the magic square of Saturn, and the people that use this, they didn't intend it to be looked at as 15-1-5, because in the occult and all and by that I mean the all the groups that would use this, they are into gematria, and in gematria you don't look at the added up number as what it adds up to. You combine the first number and the second number, and then you get whatever it adds up to. So how it says 15 all over the place, you add 1 5, and then you get 6. So then you get 666 666 666 666. Um, now I'll get this is another one that most people probably haven't heard of, which is known as the squared circle, and I'll pop it up right here. Um, it has pretty much does not have an exoteric meaning, just esoteric. Gotta take a drink. So it represents the philosopher's stone, which is a stone that's been rumored for, I believe, close to 800 years, maybe a little bit more. It's a stone that there is evidence that people have made this in the past, but no proof. But it's something that you make, a stone that you consume, and it gives the user eternal life. And obviously, it's a false eternal life, because one day whenever Jesus Christ returns, you won't have, well, you have the immortality in hell, but so this illusion of living forever and just living forever on earth or wherever is a delusion. Now I do believe science, well, black science, because it doesn't exist, will achieve that eventually before Jesus Christ comes. It's scary how close they are to achieving the immortality now, and there is people that's been cheating death for quite a long time in one way or another, but that's a whole nother video. I'm trying to stay focused with the symbolism. And but by the way, the main ingredient in the philosopher's stone is human urine, and you have to as they boil it a very specific way, and it takes several years to make, usually about 3. But back to the squared circle, it's also represents the great work, which is linked to the Baphomet, which I do want to do a full breakdown of that one drawing. Not that I enjoy looking at it, but it does mean a whole lot more than people think, and people should have an understanding. But if it bothers you looking at it, please don't watch it whenever I post it. There also needs to be an entire made one on the dollar bill, because that's another one that would take longer than 30 minutes. So the great work, anyways. The great work is a satanic, occult, esoteric belief system that if you can combine your masculine side, your feminine side, your animalistic side, and your spirit, and and combine all these instincts into one using black magic, and with the energy of Lucifer combined, that you can become perfected and become a god and live forever that way too. And it can also represent the perfected man, which is pretty much the same thing. Okay. Um Next, this is one of the more basic ones, but there's a lot of people that don't know what this is, because it's a very big deception, and that's the hexagram, which Christians think is the Star of David. And it's what I think the way they got some people to believe that is because they stuck it on the flag of Israel, but by no means is that a Christian symbols. Christianity does not use symbols. It's actually, well, it's many things. I don't even know where to start. It's the star of Saturn. It's named as a star of Rephaim in the Bible. I'll pull that out real quick in a minute. But it's also the star of Lucifer. But see, Saturn is kind of like an anagram for Satan, because before they said the word Satan, they were using the word Saturn. So Saturn and Satan is the same thing when people talk about it. Same with Father Time, and same with Kronos. That all is referencing the devil, but and then the hexagram is the most powerful symbol in the occult, even more than the inverted pentagram. You can find countless pictures of different famous witches wearing it, different Satanists, different occultists. Aleister Crowley even uses something called a unicursal hexagram. But let me look at Acts. This is in Acts chapter 7 that talks about this. Okay, Acts chapter 7, verse 43. You also took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of her god Remphan, images which you made to worship, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Alright, next, and this is one that almost nobody knows about, and that's corn. And you don't see this much, but it's one of the more sinister ones. And if you ever take a tour around DC and look around, you can find a lot of different, very strange faces, carved into stone in different buildings or outside of different buildings, with corn as the ears or corn in it. And a lot of people probably they have no clue what it is. They don't question it. They think it's just part of the art. But it's not. And this is in the Bible too. But first, what it means, and it don't really sound that bad. First, and other than just being a vegetable, it doesn't really have an exoteric meaning. It just esoteric meanings. It means fertility, and it means wisdom, which doesn't really sound bad. But this is what people don't know. In corn, in Hebrew, it means Dagon, the false god of the Old Testament. That you've probably seen statues of at some point. If you research this kind of stuff, it's the one that looks like a human fish hybrid. And now let's look at the Bible, because they also do this ritual offering of an offering of corn, wine, and oil whenever they're like dedicating a new building or something. And see, they pick things out of the Bible so they can look Christian, is what the Masons do. Because corn is the main group that uses that corn is the Freemasons, but they use these Christian symbols to make people think that they're a Christian group, because with no knowledge they normally seem Christian. They always put some of them are genuinely nice people in the lower degrees. In the lower degrees, they are usually seem like very wonderful, charitable people that seem just to be out to help the poor, and just like a social club. But They don't understand the oaths they're taking. They don't understand the symbolism. But once you get up to the higher degrees in the Red Lodge, the Scottish Rite, then those type of people are the one that shows their true colors. But anyways, so here's the good representation. This is in Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 12. Then all Judah brought the tithe of grain and the new wine and the oil to the storehouse. So the tithe that was going to be used for an offering. Now let's look at Hosea and see people are doing the exact same thing now as they did back then. Hosea 2 verse 8. For she did not know that I gave her grain, which is corn. And I am reading out the New King James version. Just because this Bible has so many good inserts and footnotes. But the King James version will use corn. But the Ethiopian Bible is the absolute most accurate Bible to go by. Unfortunately, they're very expensive. Um, but the King James, if you can't get a Ethiopian, is more accurate. The thing that makes the Ethiopian so much better is it has some of the books that was removed. Not all of them, but it has 88 books instead of 66. But anyways, Hosea 2 verse 8. For she had not known that I gave her grain, new wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. And if you want to see one of these rituals done, there's a documentary called Riddles in Stone. It's about the hidden architect in DC, and pretty much right when you turn on, I think within the first 5 or 10 minutes, it shows them doing this in DC. Okay, next is the Egyptian sun disk, and just like the others, it doesn't have an exoteric meaning, but it just has the esoteric meaning, which is it means typically the sun god Ra, which is pretty much at the top of the pantheon in Egypt. And it's also to note not only does did Crowley use that on a lot of his books. Aleister Crowley, Charles Taze Russell, the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, also put the sun disk on his books. And I made a whole video about him. I believe it's part 10, Do Slaves of Satan. And I expose how he was a Freemason. And his gravesite, a giant pyramid gravesite, is right beside a Freemason lodge, a very big one at that. Ouroboros. This is another one that doesn't really have an exoteric meaning, just esoteric. Now it's usually like the picture right there with the snake eating its own tail, but it can also be used in other ways too. Like if you see anything going around in a circle and it looks like one end is absorbing the other in some way, it always is trying to look like an ouroboros, so the people that understand and notice, but they don't want to be as open about it, that's what they'll do. But if they're trying to be open about it, they'll always use a snake or a dragon. But it represents infinity and reincarnation. Now, as above, so below, which is the Hermetic maxim, um, which is what Hermes Trismegistus wrote. I believe it's in his Corpus Hermeticum book, or might have been the Emerald Tablets. I'll post what book it is. Now you have the Kabbalah, which I would plead for everybody not to touch. Do not give any attention to that cursed manuscript. Eventually, I need to do an entire video about that, but you won't learn any secrets reading it because it's all coded and only taught to select people. All you'll do is corrupt your mind by even looking at it, because you'll be looking at a bunch of nonsense that and it's damaging to the soul, and there's nothing to learn from that's worth learning. If you actually want to learn the secrets of the Kabbalah, then I would recommend a documentary on YouTube called Kabbalah, the Religion of the Serpent. But in some ways it is disturbing, and it does play the voice of Aleister Crowley in it, which for some people can be very haunting and disturbing. So just keep that in mind. But the Tree of Life is the main symbol you'll always see for that. And it doesn't have an exoteric meaning because it's not, the Kabbalah isn't really supposed to be meant for regular people anyways. So this is the one that I'm talking about today that has the most different meanings. So the main, most of y'all know that in Freemasonry, the most popular symbol is the square and compass with the G in the middle. I won't be talking about the square and compass today, but I will be talking about what the G actually means. Now, the exoteric version is just God, but that's far from what it actually means. That's what they tell the absolute lowest initiates. Then eventually they'll tell you that it means geometry, but when they talk about geometry, they're talking about sacred geometry, which is what's used to make other complicated occult symbols or sigils, or some buildings need sacred geometry. But now geometry is not necessarily the false meaning of it. It's one of the esoteric meanings, but it's one that they would tell the lower degrees, because one symbol can mean an infinite number of things if they try to make it mean enough, and it still be true. Like, for example, all the stuff that the G means in Masonry is true, but the higher you get, they'll tell you what it really means. Then when you get a little higher, they'll tell you that it represents the number 7. Then when you get further, they'll tell you that it represents the 7 planets, and that 7's a code for that. Which, like I said, not a lie, but they keep holding off the actual meaning of it because they know you would want to quit. And because all the planets are demons, you can find this out by reading the Book of Enoch. They're all evil, Saturn being the most. Then they'll tell you later that it means gnosis, which is the Greek word for knowledge, and gnosis is how the cult of Gnosticism is started too. And by gnosis, they mean Gnostic knowledge, because Freemasonry has Gnosticism had a gigantic influence on Freemasonry and still does. Then eventually they'll tell you that means great architect of the universe. Which they're, and at this point they're kind of telling you, but it's you haven't figured out yet. Which if any of these Masons have read their Bibles, well, if they would have read the Bibles, they would have known that it was fatal at the first degree to get in that. But eventually they'll tell you the identity of the great architect of the universe, who is hiding behind the letter G. It's Lucifer, who they believe is, well, he is Lucifer is the god of the world as of now until Jesus Christ comes back, and people act like it's heresy to say that when it's in the Bible. Paul calls him the prince of the power of the air, um, and in multiple places it's said in the Bible that Lucifer is the god of this world. Now, being the god of this world and being the god of this planet is two different things. By the god of this world, it means everything worldly, but he's not the god of the planet. Meaning that while he has power to influence the world, Lucifer can't just take his hand and just destroy the world. Yahweh was good enough to set limits on it for what these things can do. And the last one I'm going to go over, and I thought this was important to get out of the way because you see this tattooed on a lot of people. It's become a very popular tattoo recently. I'm seeing a lot more people wearing it, and that they're getting fooled a lot of times into thinking that there's nothing wrong with it, and that's the Egyptian ankh. And the exoteric meaning of this is that it's just the Egyptian form of the cross. So they'll think it's just like a more hip looking cross. And I personally don't believe in wearing crosses or having a cross hung up or a cross inside of a church because in my opinion it's making a mockery out of Jesus Christ because he's not on the cross anymore. Now, if you go into the Catholic Church, which is satanic, because they don't worship Jesus Christ, they worship Semiramis, Tammuz, and Nimrod. I have an older video about that. I'll eventually do another one about the Catholic Church, but um, I walked into one about 2 or 3 months ago to show my friend how evil of a presence you actually feel in these places, and I believe I counted around, I want to say between like 23 to 27 um big signs or pictures of Jesus molded into the wall or kind of hanging up from a placement on the ground, and every single one was just of Jesus Christ suffering on the cross, not one picture of him rising from the dead. And also something that I noticed that the Catholic Church likes to do, and not just the Catholics, a lot of other people are guilty of this too. They make Jesus Christ um look feminine. They make him look very bony and skinny, and there's nothing wrong with having long hair. That doesn't make you look feminine, um, unless you combine it with the makeup induced ridiculous things like some homosexual guys would do, like curl it and all that type of stuff. Jesus might have had long hair. We don't know, but just with at the Catholic Church specifically, you'll see they'll have him laying down in kind of a feminine, weak looking way. So see, and I think that's one of the big psyops that they've done. They've made Jesus look wimpy. So it's made people feel like they're embarrassed to um praise Jesus, especially let tell the public, because they feel like they'll get made fun of. And I think one of the reasons people make fun of Jesus is because the Catholic Church has made him look wimpy. Um, and he probably didn't look like that. And the evidence I have is because he did physical labor. He was a carpenter. He was a fisherman. He was pretty much did like handyman work. Which, and you're usually in shape if you do that. So it was likely that Jesus Christ looked much more masculine um and tough than they think he did. But anyways, about the Egyptian ankh, it represents divine. The esoteric meaning is divine power, fertility, magic, and immortality. And the way, if anybody does try to come with some story of why the ankh is a good thing, I'll put it up here too. Either look up the pictures of the ancient hieroglyphs of the different pharaohs, or look up the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and you'll see all these demonic hybrid pharaohs. And yes, all of those ones are real. So was the Roman ones, the Greek ones, the Norse ones, the Celtic ones. Because 5,000 years ago, when you woke up and the first thing in your mind was walking an hour to go drink dirty water to survive, nobody would have started a conspiracy theory and carved those things just for fun. They were enslaved and had to carve them, or those things made them themselves. Um, and that's it for now. I'm gonna be doing a lot more of these, but if there's specific symbols that you want to know a deeper meaning of, comment and let me know, please, because I have a lot more deeper and more sophisticated understanding of of esoteric symbols, because I've been studying all these for so long, and I do a lot more than just go look at some AI made video, or just Google it and listen to the first thing I see. This is all information that I've compiled from all kinds of different sources for years, so you'll get a lot more detail and much more meanings from me than other people, because most people will just tell you one meaning and they'll go on. They won't find all the different meanings that these things have. All right, have a good rest of the night.